Hey guys, today we're going to talk about Frank Sinatra, or one woman's use of Frank Sinatra as an example.
You can convey this to her by telling her a specific anecdote that reflects your more sensitive or vulnerable side, or displaying an emotion in the context of the specific topic of discussion you're having with her that represents that side to your character. So by sharing a story that can show this more sensitive side of your personality, or by reacting in a certain way, it could be something not to do with the woman, but something that's happening around you, just for a moment, just giving her a glimpse and then pushing her out. This is the best way to show your sensitive side.
She talks about how guys can become more attractive by being masculine, being firm, etc., taking the lead, but once in a while showing a little bit of emotion, a little bit of vulnerability. She says that's very attractive, which is true. Not over-showing, but occasionally showing vulnerability, being unafraid to show a little bit of vulnerability, that is masculine. So that's good in theory. But then she uses an example to illustrate her point, and she brings up Frank Sinatra.
Why can't I let you know the song my heart would sing? The melody haunts my reverie. It's no matter, darling, where you are, I think of you. You walked into my lonely world.
Why do I care so much about Frank Sinatra? Because I looked up to him for many years. He was the suave guy who could sing, and he won an Oscar. While all my peers in high school were listening to whatever crap they were listening to, I listened to Frank Sinatra. I listened to all his early albums, and I don't know, he just captured an era of America that's just gone. So Frank Sinatra's like the uncle I never had. I really wish I got to meet Frank Sinatra. He was alive for a few years when I was a kid. There was a Frank Sinatra special that aired on PBS, my local station, almost every Saturday. And I just watch it every Saturday because I just enjoyed watching Frank Sinatra perform. You know, I always wanted to sing. I always wanted to be a singer. Maybe not full-time, but at least sing somehow, part-time. And I just could see myself do that kind of lounge singing. You know, no need for screaming, no need for rapping. Just use your voice, sing naturally. No opera, just sing naturally and just sing and entertain. I'm telling you guys all this because when this dating coach, her name's Kezia Noble, when she talks about Frank Sinatra, I'm not an expert, but I know more about Frank Sinatra than I probably know about a lot of other subjects. So let us just watch what she says about Frank Sinatra.
What women used to say about Frank Sinatra that was very interesting is they said, you don't know whether you want to mother him or fuck him. And I thought it was that paradox that makes it so exciting. He has a reputation. He was the very tough guy. He was very, very confident. He was extremely alpha. But if you read the famous women who had slept with him or had fallen in love with him and knew him on an intimate level, they always said that there was this kind of little boy lost. There was this side to him he didn't like showing people that made them want to mother him. And there you have this amazing contrast.
He doesn't like showing it to women, but it sounds like occasionally it comes out when he doesn't want it to come out. So it's not really vulnerability that he chooses to show, but it's vulnerability that he shows out of his control. So that's not exactly the right example. There's a big difference between, you know, I'm not feeling good tonight. I'm just not going to feel good tonight. Just natural, and then tomorrow it's going to pass. Versus, I'm not feeling good tonight, but I have to be alpha, but I can't do it anymore. Right? That's how she seems to be describing Frank Sinatra, and that doesn't fit with her paradigm. What she seems to be portraying Frank Sinatra as is a man-child. Frank Sinatra's a man-child, a guy that really just didn't grow up in here, and he has all these problems. Maybe he has this alpha facade, but deep down at heart, he's a little boy, and women like that little boy. It's the asshole paradigm. Deep down in heart, he's really insecure. He's a little boy. That's what Kezia is just really describing Frank Sinatra as, even though she's trying to portray him as something else, as someone who's really masculine, who only consciously chooses to show vulnerability when he wants to. So she's not applying him correctly, which unfortunately most people, when they hear a story, they're going to remember the story and not the theory / the principles behind it. They're going to remember Frank Sinatra and they're going to think manchild. Oh, so women like man children? You see, this is the problem when you give an example that doesn't fit with your theory. Your theory is saying, okay, occasionally as a man, you choose to show vulnerability and then you go back to your manly ways. But Frank Sinatra, from what she's describing, is not that way. There's many stories if you read into it. Frank Sinatra once got so pissed he took a sledgehammer and broke a mansion. There's stories of him getting drunk and just getting into brawls and stuff. That's very not alpha behavior. You know, he was the leader of his group. He had his Rat Pack, him, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, and then if they weren't there, he had other friends there with him. So he was always the leader of the group, but it's not very alpha to just get into drunken brawls. So a better example to illustrate Kezia's point would have been, okay, so Frank Sinatra one night, I'm just making this up, one night, let's say he's with 4 of his Rat Pack, and then something, and maybe Dean Martin does something, and then Frank Sinatra calls him out, but then at the end of the day, Frank Sinatra sits him down and tells him, hey, look, blah, 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 we had a heart-to-heart with him. You see? That's a showing vulnerability, but not the man-child type of vulnerability that Kezia Noble's doing. And I'm assuming, being the leader of the Rat Pack and always being the leader in social situations, Frank Sinatra had stories like that.
That's beautiful, and I've met some guys that have got that right. And I believe it's those guys who have the sensitive side and show it when they choose to show it, and then push the girl out very quickly.
So let us really cut the bullshit and explain why Frank Sinatra was such a hit with the ladies. When he started singing, it was in the 40s. Frank Sinatra had a punctured eardrum, so he wasn't able to serve in the military. What that meant was he was one of the only men still around back home who was a marriageable age. So when he performed, they were called Bobby Soxers. The women would literally faint because they hadn't seen a young man in months. So people who thought women were crazy for Elvis or women were crazy for the Beatles just don't even know what it's like when Frank Sinatra performed in the 40s. He was another level. He literally could get any woman if he wanted to, because literally there was no other men his age to compete against him. So that type of experience, when you are the only talented guy and all the women are literally fainting and yelling. There's stories of women yelling so loud that they couldn't even hear him sing. It was just, oh, there's an attractive guy singing confidently. Ah! You know how women are when they see a celebrity. It raises your confidence a lot. And I believe at that point, Frank Sinatra was already married to his high school sweetheart. He grew up with a lady named Nancy, who he actually named his daughter after too. But his wife's name was also Nancy, and he was married to her already. So he's like a taken man. I'm sure he slept with some of these women that were his fans, but he was a taken man, and then he had every woman that he could have if he wanted to. Frank Sinatra drank a lot, and he smoked a lot, and he did a lot of things. I mean, he probably didn't sleep a lot either because he's always partying, gambling, doing a lot of bad things for his health. But in his early years, he was a really good-looking guy. So he had the looks. Without a doubt, he had the talent. He was a great singer, and he had the situation, which is that World War II was going on and he was the guy. Once World War II ended, all the guys started coming back. Of course, Frank Sinatra's popularity went down a little bit, but he was still Frank Sinatra. He slowly started having a film career, and Frank Sinatra even won an Oscar, and beyond that, he was the original Ocean's 11. The Ocean's 11 movie that you guys are familiar with, George Clooney and stuff, that actually was a remake. The original Ocean's 11 was Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Joey Bishop, Frank's crew. So Frank has always had an entourage, and they could pull any girl. So he's had the good friend group. He's obviously had the money from his singing, and he's had the talent. He's had the fame. So Frank Sinatra was the whole package. When you're that type of full package, women will probably be a little forgiving with your man-child ways. So that is something that maybe Kezia needs to remember, needs to think about. She'll put up with a lot of stuff if you're bringing home $2 million. She'll put up with your cheating ways. She'll put up with your tantrums. If you're the Frank Sinatra and you're 20 years older than him, I believe when he married Mia Farrow's like 19 and he was like in his 50s. But she'll put up a lot because she looks up to you. Her father and mother look up to you. You see where this is going? So if there's a takeaway from Frank Sinatra that it was his man-child ways that got women, I think you're seeing the wrong side of him. It wasn't that. It was the talent plus the money plus the luck plus his entourage plus etc., etc., etc. And he also had Kennedy connections. I mean, he basically helped John F. Kennedy win the election. And then Robert Kennedy, John F. Kennedy's little brother, said, you know, Frank Sinatra has mob connections. You got to stay away from him. And apparently Frank Sinatra was actually the one that introduced Kennedy to Marilyn Monroe and a bunch of other people that Kennedy slept with. So Robert Kennedy, little brother Kennedy's like, yo, stay away from that guy, man. That guy's going to lead you down the wrong path. And so when Kennedy visited California, originally he was supposed to stay in Frank Sinatra's place, and Frank Sinatra was so happy. You're like, oh my God, president's going to visit. And he ended up going to Bing Crosby's place because his little brother Kennedy, Robert, warned John F. Kennedy, Jack, about Sinatra. So Sinatra got so pissed. That's why he destroyed his mansion. He built his mansion. He built a helipad for Kennedy to land his helicopter, and Kennedy never came. And Frank Sinatra got so pissed, he destroyed the entire mansion that he built. And then Peter Lawford was a Kennedy. So Peter Lawford basically got ostracized from the Rat Pack because Frank Sinatra's like, fuck you, man. You were a Kennedy. You're supposed to hook me up. I treated you well, and look what you did. You betrayed me. It's like Tommy was so, you all betrayed me. But yeah, Frank Sinatra had a temper. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He had a temper. If he didn't have the mob connections, and if he wasn't Frank Sinatra, probably he would have not gotten far with that temper / a lot of his bad habits. So in conclusion, guys, if you have a talent, work on that talent. Work on becoming a better person too, but work on that talent, because that talent will get you much farther than trying to become a man-child or trying to pick when to show vulnerability. You know, trying to develop that trait all your life versus if you have a talent or something and developing that. Just saying, it's opportunity cost. You could try to do both. Hopefully you have time to do both. If you had to choose one, develop your talent. If you guys have ever seen The Godfather, you know the Johnny Fontaine character from The Godfather 1, the singer who The Godfather has to help get the film role because he slept with some director or writer's best gal and then ended up knocking her up. So that character is based off Frank Sinatra. And if you remember how Johnny Fontaine was in the movie, he was not some really masculine guy. He was almost crying. Remember when he saw Vito Corleone? Vito Corleone had to slap him.
Godfather, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do.
You can act like a man! What's the matter with you?
If you read up into Frank Sinatra, there's so many stories. Like when he married Mia Farrow, Frank Sinatra married 4 times. What broke up his first marriage was non-alpha behavior. He basically had an affair with this lady named Ava Gardner. It broke up his first marriage. He already had a daughter and everything, so messed up his family. When he divorced Ava Gardner and he married Mia Farrow, there are stories of him with Mia Farrow. He got so controlling. He wouldn't let her be in a film. And then eventually Mia Farrow was cast in Rosemary's Baby, which was a breakout role for him. Frank Sinatra got so angry, he basically said, it's me or the movie. And Mia's like, well, I'm an actress. I have to do the movie. So Frank Sinatra served the divorce papers. And then afterwards, Frank Sinatra still didn't learn his lesson after Mia Farrow. He married Barbara Marx. So I think the reason why Frank Sinatra really didn't like the character of Johnny Fontaine in The Godfather was because it probably hit more close to home than what he portrayed himself as. In reality, he probably was a lot more like the John Fontaine character than the public wants to think of. Besides the fact that The Godfather also implied that Frank Sinatra had mob connections, which Frank Sinatra basically denied all his life, despite the fact that he was friends with a lot of people in the mob, but he always said, no, I never had any business dealings, I never helped the mob, whatever. The John Fontaine version of Frank Sinatra, which is probably the man-child version of Frank Sinatra, is not what men should aspire to be. Even Kezia says in her video, you want to be the man who consciously, very occasionally shows vulnerability and then goes back to your masculine ways. That's not how she's describing Frank Sinatra, and very likely that's not really who Frank Sinatra was. So guys, I hope you guys really enjoyed this. Again, Frank Sinatra, I always looked up to his talent. I loved him. I try to emulate the way he sings, etc. I want to keep responding to these dating coaches, whatever, because, hey, when I was lost in college, I never watched Kezia Noble, but I looked up dating coach advice. So I know people who are lost are looking up this type of advice. And as you can tell, this type of advice is not good. It's in a way more counterproductive. So I just want to correct some of the wrongs and start discussion, get people to really think about it. And I'm not saying I'm always right, but hey, I think I'm more right than she is, especially since I know the persona and the history of Frank Sinatra way better than she does. So what I encourage all of you to do is, if you guys see clips like this you want to see me analyze, send it to me. I know some of you have sent me stuff and I haven't gotten around to looking at them, but seriously. And you guys also, if you guys see something you want to apply your analysis, analyze it, send it to me. I'll put it in. I sometimes don't have things to say, but I'll say what you want to say. If you want me to pass the word along, I'm serious. Learn and grow together. That's what this channel's about. We're trying to learn. We're trying to get better at life, which is hard. And not hard as, oh my God, nihilism, but hard as in, okay, there's challenges. How do we solve it? All right, thank you guys so much. This was Jerry. Bye-bye.